How y'all doing? About a year ago, at the time I'm filming this, I did a couple of book reviews of Edgar Rice Burroughs' At the Earth's Core and Pellucidar. This is two of the books of his Pellucidar series, 2 out of 7. I reviewed that. It's a story arc in of itself. I'm going to link down below my review on that for those who are interested, and possibly up there in that corner where that little feature. But to shorten down the essence of it, it involves two people from our surface, David Innes and his professor friend Dr. Perry, building a giant drill that goes deep into the earth, about 500 miles in. They end up popping out inside the hollow earth, where the interior of the earth is its own landscape of lush environments, jungles, forests, oceans, and have you. And the core gives off eternal sunlight, so there's no night at all, because of the features of that. And it's populated with prehistoric beasts, from ancient mammals to dinosaurs and what have you, as well as other weird creatures here and there, as we will explore the series. The people who do live there, humans, live in a caveman society, tribes and all that, with their own customs. And when Perry and Innes were exploring this, they found other humans who some of them were enslaved by these giant British ape creatures called Shoggoths, who are also under command of Mahars, these giant pterosaurs with mind powers, and they rule many of the people in that area of Pellucidar. Long story short, David Innes starts rebelling against the Mahars. He falls in love with Deanne the Beautiful. He makes her his wife. And by fighting off the Mahars, they start building their own empire with David Innes as the emperor, and Perry hoping to advance the primitive societies to better levels of living. That's a nice little shortcut between these two books, of what that is. But it doesn't stop there. Edgar Rice Burroughs decides to write several more. At the time I made that video, I wasn't quite sure if I was going to read the rest of them. Well, I decided to go ahead into eBay and get all of the other books, and I'm going to review them right here, 3 through 7. So let's take a look what they're about. The third book of the series is Tanar A Bellusador. And the story begins with Edgar Rice Burroughs writing himself into it, talking to a friend of his, Jason Gridley. Jason Gridley is now listening to special radio waves he discovered here, and he finds out that these radio waves are from Pellucidar. Dr. Perry is sending these signals out to the surface, saying anyone to help. Apparently something has happened to them, and that's where the story begins. David Innes' empire was under attack by pirates. Yeah, I know it's kind of weird because throughout the series we know that humans live in sort of primitive tribal societies under caveman, type of existence, and then we all have to have these pirates, and they come on these ships, and they have gunpowder weapons, although inferior to David Innes' kind. So they attack, capture a few of the men, including Tanar A Bellusador, who is our main protagonist. And David Innes and a few others are going to try and rescue him and whoever they can from what they captured. And so try to sum up the adventures of Tanar here. He's captured by these pirates, and he's promised by the leader in the ship there that we want you to tell us how to make better gunpowder and better guns, in essence, and we'll let you go. So he sort of plays along with this, even though he doesn't really have that sort of knowledge of that, but he plays along with it. And while he's captured on her, he meets this beautiful woman named Stellara, who, according to everybody in the ship, she's, despite the fact she's a beautiful young woman, there are all these grubby pirates on that. She, say, she claims that she is one of them, and wants nothing to do with him. He is nothing to her. This is going to be the love interest, mind you. But later it was found out that she is not of this. Her mother and her were captured while she was very young, and she was raised up among them. Her father was of a tribe, different tribe there that was attacked by these corsairs. But again, that was revealed sort of later on. But the pirate ship gets wrecked by a storm, and the pirates that survive kind of run off their own lifeboats, leaving Tanar A Bellusador behind. And eventually they get to a new island, which is the home of Stellara, because coincidences like that happens here. They find her own tribe, and she marks her proof that she's one of them. But the story doesn't end there, of course. More attacks and such, suspicions and all that. I'll try and summarize this without giving too much information. One of the things about this is Tanar's exploration outside of his own land. He meets Stellara's people, who are nice and friendly and loving, more so than his tribe is. Not that there isn't any, but they're more expressive of how they treat others. He was more stoic, so it's this new experience in him. Later, he finds another tribe in the book where everyone treats each other like dirt, abusively and whatever they can. So you sort of meet the opposite of that. Let's see. Of course, the Corsairs come by and attack again, separating Stellara and Tanar. Tanar, finds himself underground, where you find these monstrous creatures. They're not dinosaurs. They're real monstrous creatures, meat-eating creatures called Corpies. He escapes the death with a guy named Jude, and as he finds Stellara again. One of the pirates who is obsessing with Stellara tries to capture her. He kills him, and him and his companion, now Stellara, are together for a minute. And Tanar wakes up, and she's gone because Jude abducted her throughout the while they slept. I would say throughout the night, but there is a night in Pellucidar. And it's a series of adventures further than that, where eventually he gets captured by the Corsairs again, and now is taken to their city. And the city has more of a Moorish look towards it. So. Of course, he meets up with David and a couple of companions who are looking for him, and they try eventually they find everybody and they try to escape back home. But before they do, they travel a little bit and they find out where these Corsairs came from. You see, David found his way to Pellucidar through a drill going 500 miles underneath the earth, but there's an alternate opening that leads to the surface, and that is and that later found out is in the North Pole. So there's an opening that goes straight to Pellucidar naturally. Now, I'm going to spoil the ending of this a little bit. Everyone escapes except David, who is the Emperor of Pellucidar, and he's captured by the Corsairs, and it leaves it hanging like that. So it's one of those books that has different parts in it as a series. So that leaks into, and the story ends in the framing at the beginning. Jason Gridley has heard the story, and he's going to set up a rescue expedition to try and save David. And he's going to get the help of one of Edgar Rice Burroughs' other creations, or his, in a sense. The fourth book of the series is Tarzan at the Earth's Core. This is the first Tarzan book I've ever read. I've never read any of the other books about this, and I'm reading this because it's the next one in the series. Alright, so we continue off from the Tanar A Bellusador. Jason Gridley, who was listening in to Dr. Perry through his special radio waves, has decided to help rescue David Innes, who is captured by the Corsairs, and so he does this by hiring Tarzan. And Tarzan agrees, and not only do they get Tarzan, he gets some of the tribal warriors that he's familiar with. They enlist one of his German friends and they build this brand new airship with special materials. They call it the O-220. They load up ammunition, all sorts of survival gear, even a plane attached to the airship. And they go in through the North Pole opening, and they have their series of adventures. When you get over there to this new world, Tarzan wanders by himself. He gets captured by the Sharagovs, who, because he was raised by the apes, and the Sharagovs being a ape-like creature, through coincidence they have a certain primitive language that I guess is a commonality of all of that. So he's able to communicate with them. He goes on he goes on his own adventures with helping other people of different tribes and what have you. Gridley trying to find Tarzan because he was captured by Shargos. He hasn't returned yet. He goes in on the airplane, which you figure would be a full advantage, but he gets knocked down by one of the pterosaurs of Pellucidar. He crash lands, and he has his own adventures by meeting up with a beautiful woman, Janna, who later turns out to be a chieftain's daughter, because of course she is. It's an Edgar Rice Burroughs story. All women, love interests are of high rank of some kind, or at least about all of them. And when it comes to these adventures, I digress. So another group from the airship try to do a search party for Jason Gridley, and they get first, and all heck breaks loose when an animal attacks him and distracts him, separating one from the group. He'll have his own story. I'll tell about that later. And throughout all the, they have a series of adventures. They meet a new race of serpent lizard men, which they had to fight off. But in the end, they will meet back all together, and they will rescue David Ennis. Spoilers. Again, I enjoyed this, but the ending suffers one of the flaws I've noticed about Edgar Rice Burroughs to a modern reader. I'll explain that in the end. But enjoyable all the same. Explores more Pellucidar, and the challenges. But it's not just. But the story arc is not over yet, because remember, the animal attack separated one from the group, and he's going to have his own story of his adventures. So let's look into that. We're now into the fifth book, Back to the Stone Age. This one is a book tying up loose ends from an event from the Tarzan at the Earth's core. The loose end was the fact that the animal attack that attacked the crew trying to find Jason Gridley has separated one from the group, named Von Horst. That's Lieutenant Von Horst. That's his shortened name. He has a very long name. And in fact, it's jokingly that all the people of Pellucidar call him Von, because that's about the only thing they would easily recognize that. But, okay, so Von Horst is separated from that and trying to make do with his situation. But first he is captured by a beast called a Troodon. This is not a dinosaur or mammal or anything. This is sort of a dragon-like creature that has abducted him and injects him with a poison that paralyzes him. And the Troodons take their prey, paralyze them, leave them in their nest for the young to hatch and eat them. While he's paralyzed, wondering when his fate will come, he finds another person with him named Dengar. He's paralyzed as well, but they can talk to each other. They just can't move. But so they befriend each other and just do what they can under their, to their ultimate fate. But Von Horst finds out he is able to move, before his friend does, who was there before he was. It was found out that his clothing protected him from getting a full dosage of the poison, so he's able to finally get to move, and before the young hatch to devour him and his companion, he finds a way to escape. And so he befriends this guy, and as they travel around, they meet another man named Scruff. He's hunting a saber-toothed cat, because by doing so, he can get the favor of the tribe and choose and have the mate of his choosing. Now, Von Horst, bear in mind, he's equipped with a gun and all that stuff, so he does, so he's got a full advantage of that. But he tries to live in as best as he could. Of course, Scruff and other primitive people don't know what that weapon is, but he's trying to be careful with his ammunition, so he doesn't use it as often as he can. Now, so they decide, they travel with Scruff. He seems trustworthy enough there. And eventually, they find a saber-toothed cat, which Von Horst kills. And so they find Scruff's tribe. Scruff has found out he is not an honorable person. He makes the claim himself. He claims Von Horst and Dengar as slaves, and so they're now enslaved with the others. And that's where Von Horst meets his love interest, which is Leja. First, she likes him at first, but later there's going because again, as Edgar Rice Burroughs is kind of cliche. There's going to be a tension because they lead a slave revolt against their captors, and he had to knock her out because she was kind of being stubborn. It's like, you don't tell me what to do, all that, some weird custom about that. But eventually they all escape. But so as Leja's with them and all that, they try and go their separate ways. Dengar's got his own. He has his own tribe to go. She has her own. She decides to go off from herself, hating him. But in his honor, Von Horst is like, I can't leave her alone as she travels through this dangerous world. So he goes to that regardless of her hatred of him. So let's see. They enter a forest of death, as it's called, where he kills a T-Rex there. This was also, but they were also captured by these albino cannibals called Gorbuses. And as they were captured, trying to fatten it up to eat them, they find Scruff and the tribal leader there, so they are now all in the same place. and now they're all prisoners waiting to be fattened and all that. They find a way to escape. Despite the temporary truce, Lajaz is captured by by the two. So Von Horst is trying to goes out and tries to rescue her again. He helps a mammoth through from his injury, and eventually the mammoth befriends him. Lajaz and Scruff are captured by the bison man called Genax. No, he's not bison men. These are not people that call themselves. These are actual bull-headed bisons, humanoids. And long story short, they find her tribe, and the typical ending to Edgar Rice Burroughs. I won't give out the details of that. If you read Edgar Rice Burroughs, he's very formulaic, and to the point where it's kind of hard for a modern reader to enjoy these as about how these are written. I'll get to that in the end about the flaws of that. But again, enjoyable. It nicely ties up the loose ends. This is just exploring more Pellucidar with a new character. Almost reinventing the wheel a bit, but it shows more of the world and more adventures, and while going through the old Edgar Rice Burroughs cliches, which are not strictly his cliches, but he's definitely guilty about that. But again, I'll explain that at the end. The sixth book of the series is Land of Terror. A little interesting side note here, this is the last book to be published of the Pellucidar series while Edgar Rice Burroughs was alive. The last book was posthumously, of course. But what this is that this is a further adventures of David Innes. We go back to him as the main protagonist of the story. And what it is that Von Horst from Back to the Stone Age, after his adventures, and he becomes not only the wins the heart of Lajaz, he becomes through her the new tribal leader. But he was found by David Innes. What was he doing here away from his home? Well, Jason Gridley was telling him that he wanted to find him, and David Innes sends out his search party to help do so. Well, he finds Von Horst. He finds out he's okay where he's at in his new life and all that. So him and his men are going home, and that's where his adventure begins. His group is carried, as his group was going out, carrying on their way home, they are attacked by these ugly, hairy raiders called the Ooh women. These are women who capture David Innes and now makes him a slave. He meets Zor, and they both escape. And the Oog women are where the women are dominant and men are slaves and all that. Their women are big and gruff and everything. And as I say, they're hairy, but the men are not as strong to overpower them. And they are more or less the lower class amongst them. But that's a relatively short few chapters. Or they eventually escape, and that's where they are now captured by the Junkins, which is a city dominated by insane people. They're all crazy. This is an insane asylum of a city. They try to work around the craziness of all this, and on madness of these people. In their own way. They, of course, they were captured by them, and they meet a woman named Cleto who helps them out. The thing is, as David tries to escape through a secret passage there, he finds out that his wife, Deanne the Beautiful, is in this city. She was on the way. She was trying to search for David Innes because back home, while David was gone, another man was trying to make her his wife. Try and take over. Well, she ran off and tried to search for him, and does. So, David and her, they escape the city. They find a nice little cave. David needs to go back and save his friends. And after a series of adventures through that, he comes back to the cave and finds Deanne gone. He's worried and trying to figure out what happened to her. Was she killed? Was she captured? He doesn't know where to look for her at all. But they have to keep going. All right. Later, David and his friends are captured by the Azar giants. They capture them, try to fatten them up, and so they can eat them, but they eventually escape. Then where Dave, but he was separated from his friends, so Dave is on his own. Later, he gets captured again by giant ants. And so we explore this giant ants and what they do to the prey and all that. He meets up with a guy who's also captured. They eventually escape. This man that he finds, he is of a tribe that live on these floating islands on the ocean. So yeah, one of the weird, interesting things they try to introduce in Pellucidar is that these islands slowly float around, and this is the island in particular is called Ruva. Now, David is meets this man, and he tried, at first he tried to go as friends, at least that's what he convinces David to be. When he finally reaches there, he tries to make David his slave, and it's like, no guys, I'll tell you what, I can help you out against this rival tribe that you're up against. And he does meet, he finds a way to gain the tribe's favor, so where he is, where he's considered one with the tribe, but he has to make his escape because they're not going to let David go. He knows too much. He's too useful to them. But David meets another slave who happens to be from his empire, which means she has the ability to help guide them home if he can get them both out of here. So now this story there, is a case of going home, on his way home, they get captured by one group of people, they escape. They get captured by another group of people or monsters, they escape. And it's that same pattern multiple times throughout this. So it's a good, this is a way for him to introduce a lot of the features of Pellucidar, new ideas, but it follows the same pattern of how they go about it. And this is one of those that ends very quickly, in the end. It almost feels very anticlimactic. I'll get to that shortly. But we got one more book to go. Let's see what that is. The final book of the series, written posthumously after the death of Edgar Rice Burroughs, is Savage Pellucidar. Now, this story starts off with David Innes returning home after his adventures from the last book. He meets up with Perry, who's trying to come up with flying devices for transportation. After failing, with an airplane, he starts making a hot air balloon. Well, while he's doing this, David is given word that a part of his empire is under attack by a rival tribe, so sending an army out to help them out, he is tricked because the enemy's already taken over, as posed as a good guy to entrap a small portion of the army that David was a part of. The rest was coming by or held back in reserve. So this is also we're introduced to a new character of Hodon, who's a swift runner. He takes pride in that, and sends messages through his speed. Basically, Pellucidar's marathon man. Now, as they're captured, we're introduced to the love interest of Hodon, or soon to be love interest of Hodon, and that is Uwa. Now, these two characters are kind of humorous of their flaws. Hodon is confident, almost to a chauvinistic, pretty much a chauvinistic in his own way. He takes a liking to Uwa. Uwa is a chronic liar. They meet her as a slave. She is, this is an Edgar Rice Burroughs story. She is a daughter of a chieftain, but she kind of exaggerates everything about her. Is like, don't mess with me. I have so many brothers. She keeps changing the number of the brothers. She's and whatever. I think if she mentions sisters or anything, she's the most beautiful of them all. But we're all. She contradicts herself through all the lies and everything. So that's the type of character. That's the type of hookup we have here. Eventually they do make him escape. Let's see. And the series of adventures involves, as they are running away, Uwa and Hodon meet are taken by a saber-toothed men, and they are captured and are going to be kept there till they're fattened up and eaten. And they meet another prisoner there who's also from the surface. He's not a native Pellucidar. This is a man who came by through a ship long time ago, and he is now a very old man at this point. He's been there longer than what normal humans ever alive. There's another off-the-side thing about Pellucidar, is that people from outside tend to live longer through some weird events. He's been there a while, and not only that, he's also developed a taste of eating people. And you kind of find out on his stories there, and it's almost kind of a dark comedic take that he has constantly wants to eat people or suggest which people to eat in certain situations. So there's that. But they escaped the cat people. Meanwhile, while all this was going on, Perry makes a hot air balloon, and Deanne, is going to take a ride in it by herself. She's lifted up in the air, incredible view. There's a flaw in the hot air balloon to where there's no control of it going down, so she starts flying off. So as David and Hadron, and all the companions, they say, they come back, they find out, hey, Deanne is gone, because she left in a hot air balloon. Okay, we need to make another hot air balloon, to chase after her. David was going to do that while another group tries to go on land. Hold on Ua are kind of part of this expedition, where, long story short, we are discovering a new civilization in a Bronze Age level of technology. And apparently they're at war with each other over religious reasons, because Deanne the Beautiful lands on one side of it, where they believe her to be a goddess and that they were waiting for to return. Ua later joins the other side, attacking them, and also they believe that she's a goddess of return, because Ua, being a chronic liar, she keeps adding, and making up stories on how she is divine and all that. They don't know about. Neither of them know about the other posing as a goddess and all that. So there's the comedic elements on that. Let's see. Another part of the story, Tiger Girl. That's where David is trying to find his wife Dia, and through another balloon. And then we got the last of that. So it comes to a conclusion. Everything kind of turns out fine in the end as these stories go around. Sorry if it doesn't sound like a great review on that, but I don't want to give too much away. So Savage Blues, our last book of the series, kind of gets a little confusing because first it makes sense, but then as they try to meet up or try to split up, or when something else bad's happening, I almost can hardly keep up. But let's see. But it's the last of it. It's good to know that these things would tend to stop. Now, I enjoyed this series overall. I will give it that. But it's not a perfect series. Let me explain. Now, one of the flaws of Burroughs that is something I've known about before I started reading Burroughs, and it's not really unique to him. It's something we've all known about any sort of genre fiction, is the repetition. Now, these adventure stories is a case of man goes out, he finds himself a new world, meets a woman, same conflict as always. With Burroughs, the woman that will be the love interest, the main character, is going to be high in the society of, in this case, chieftain's daughters, because again, it's not just unique to Pellucidar and John Carter of Mars. Any woman that's out there, she could be a slave when they meet him. They could be a princess up front, but one way or the other, they're going to be found out that if they're not in high end, you will find out they were always high end, in whether they knew it or not. But that's again, he's repetitive in that sense. Now in Pellucidar in particular, you are constantly throughout the series told that because there is no sense of time, they talk about the habits of, okay, it's time to sleep. They just sleep until they wake up. When they work on something, they just keep working on it. When they're tired, they go back to sleep, and so you don't have a true measure of time for the readers there. Now we're probably used to that in watching movies where long distance of time, for instance, building something or is usually done in a montage. So we watch, and a lot of work a lot of times is just short in condensed area. Here he does the same thing. We probably imagine it as a montage, but it always tells the back that they just keep going until it's done. And when you look at all the things that happen here, long as amount of time is done for all the things that they did. So it could be months in the events of each story, because because there's no sense of time for these people. They just do what they can until it's done. But he constantly tells us this all the time, to the point where in the Land of Terror he mentions this. As I mentioned this to the irritants, or the ad nauseum of how time works in Pellucidar. So he is aware of this, and he kind of points out at that. So you can forgive him on that one when you get to that point. Now there are some elements that like when they're captured, they don't take all their equipment, or they don't take there was a couple of times, like when you capture somebody, you take away all the elements of your prisoners that will keeping them from fighting back or helping them escape. And they would do this, but there are times that when the characters are captured, they're not, they're not given, they may take their weapons, but they may leave the gun, which is understandable. This Pellucidars, people of Pellucidar and the other beings around there may not know what that piece of equipment is, and that's a small amount of logic to where they can keep the weapon. Although it's a gun, you think, well, they could just shoot their way out. They could threaten them and get out. But the ones with guns have limited ammunition, so they don't want to waste it, and they just have to find another means. So there's a bit of logic you could use to justify why they may still have the weapon over time. But there was one scene where not only were they taken prisoner, they were allowed to keep their weapons. It's like, we're not thieves. It's like, that's not the point. But I guess it's kind of, I don't know if it's laziness or just he wasn't clever enough to just justify why that happened, so he just does it. Now, one of the things that I kind of I wouldn't say irritate me, but I wish he would have extended upon is that the books tend to end very quickly. And I've seen this in a couple of his works as well. Not more than a couple, but it's almost a thing where you go through all this adventure, but when it gets to the climax or to the very end, you go through all this and go, there it is, it's done. The book is over. That's how it feels like. And many of you who already read the series know what I'm talking about. For instance, when they rescue David Innes from the Corsairs, it's only about a few pages where they reach there, here's our demands, here's what we'll do if you don't do this, and if you don't, and here's our demonstration, and just, there it goes. And then not too far to the end on that, one. And the other one where in the, I think it was, Land of Terror, you're at the point where David Innes is, seems, he was writing like he's, almost at a loss, he's, almost hopeless in there. And then, it ends with that sort of pattern about that in the last 2 or 3 pages. Almost to the point, like, I went through all this just to end it like that. I mean, usually you see something like this as a joke, of that, but no, it's a bit, not something you would write in a way today. But despite all the flaws that I mentioned here, and as I'm sure many of you would tell me others that I'm probably aware of but didn't mention here, there are merits. This is highly imaginative, influential setting. You think about yourself as a kid in this time. Early Edgar Rice Burroughs was writing since 1912 with Princess of Mars in publication in a magazine, later put in book forms, and later brings up Tarzan. This is the early 1900s to the time of his death in the mid 1900s. And think of yourself as a kid reading this, and what else would you find these type of adventures, exotic planets or exotic lands and stuff like that? Television wasn't common. Parts of it wasn't invented around yet. Movies didn't show this often, and weren't necessarily well made. But and there were also kind of lower budget B flicks and stuff like that. So where would you get like this, where your imagination soared, that is in book form? It would not only be more common, it's made a lasting impression upon you when the theater of your mind, regardless of how ridiculous this is. I think one of the values of reading is that the theater of your mind can shape it, at least in most cases, to where it's not as ridiculous. These events can be taken as seriously or as funny as you can form it to be. And I think that's one of the advantages. Burroughs was at the right place and time to have generations of people who were at that state to be consume his medium and learn to respect that. So here you have At the Earth's Core, his Pellucidar series. Hollow Earth is not unique to Edgar Rice Burroughs' imagination. It has been done before in others like Jules Verne's The Center of the Earth, that sort of thing. But this was one of those where it has been influential things like Dungeons and Dragons, way back in I say second edition, actually back in Beckme, as I've learned from Mr. Welch. You should watch his channel if you want to learn about Dungeons and Dragons: World of Mystara. He has made you get a PDF. It's free to download, and you can purchase a print on demand to write areas to where he has done Mystara for 5th edition D&D. He's adapted it to that, and it's free to download. You can make a donation to him if you want, but long story short, he can't claim you can't make money off this, which are like fundraisers and stuff like that. So it's through donations. But I'm digressing. So he does Mystara, which is the first setting for Dungeons and Dragons, and one of the supplements of Mystara is the Hollow Earth. Oh, sorry, the Hollow World, where there is, like Pellucidar, there is a land inside that has dinosaurs, prehistoric creatures, and other civilizations that are preserved there. So it's not exact, but it's enough elements where you know where he got from. So it's influential that way. And if anything, these, despite all the flaws on this, they're great adventure stories. Also, I want to mention that I think Michael Moorcock once said, "I'd rather be a bad writer with good ideas than a good writer with bad ideas." And this is an example of, you could probably say that Burroughs could be a bad writer the way how he is kind of repetitive and how he thinks that, get things moving throughout the stories are kind of ridiculous. But they're such good ideas that where you're aware of it or not, you drop it just to get into the story. Now, as repetitive as this is, if you read these as a book at a time, throughout this as a time, the repetitiveness is a good refresher. Reading it all at once, as I did with these last 5 books, it gets a little samey and all that, to where you just can't write like this in modern writings. So I don't know what else to say about that. I guess you get the idea. Many of your readers already know what I'm talking about. But those who have not read the series, you can be prepared, with the flaws about this. But regardless of all that, I still recommend them. Go back to the classics, people. Good or bad, they help build your current genre today, and you might learn a thing or two about what you may be missing out of modern stuff. And this is one. So yeah. Go read Michael Moorcock. Go read Robert E. Howard, Clark Ashton Smith, all the guys in the pulp era, and all that time. Go back to the 80s, 70s, and 60s, and go to a used bookstore and look at not only just the popular, but off the sides here and there. Could be derivatives of other greater works, but there might be something in there that you, as a modern reader, or maybe a potential writer, because we don't have elements of these books in today's books. Let's say we could bring that back. And not only go back to, just the Edgar Rice Burroughs era, go back before that. Go before Tolkien. Go to Lord Dunsany. And a guy, forget the guy's name, the guy who wrote The Nightland, and also the War Boros. Look all that stuff up. Those are the foundations and nodes and the foundations that built today. And you may realize that as it expanded forward, you can still find it impressive, but it's like, it doesn't feel the same as we did in the past. And I like these elements of the past. Let's see if we can bring that to the future there, Maybe we need to have less world building to where our phone book size. Go back to the pulps where it's straightforward to the point. These books are usually about maybe 100 or 150 on the smaller end to 200 pages or so, and they're not that big, but they can be packed full, just straight to the points, and straight to the story, cut the fat and see how lean it is. So here you go, Pellucidar series with At the Earth's Core, Pellucidar, Tanar A Bellusador, Tarzan at the Earth's Core, Back to the Stone Age, Land of Terror, and Savage Pellucidar. All 7 of those books here, I'm glad I've read them. It has a lot of elements I enjoy, and despite the flaws, I still came out enjoying it. So there you go. Thank you all for watching, and you all have a nice day.